According to town officials, the wastewater treatment plant, also known as a sewer plant, is not failing because the quality of the wastewater coming out of the facility is meeting the discharge permit requirements imposed by the state's Environment Department. Just because the sewer plant is meeting the standards for treated wastewater quality does not mean that the plant cannot be described as failing, because it is. Before we get into specifics, how do we know the plant is in trouble? First, Mayor Bassett, in a recent interview in The Independent, said that bringing sewer service to local neighborhoods was necessary to bring residential flow to the sewer system because dilution is the solution. Solution to what exactly? In the beginning, the concept behind creating the sewer plant was to provide service to commercial customers and to create opportunities for future high-density housing and development that is yet to be built. It was never thought that the plant would pay for itself right away. Instead, construction of the plant was intended to allow a gross receipts tax base to develop from existing and future commercial customers, which would in turn create positive cash flow. The town's current efforts to use the plant to service a built-out neighborhood of low-density houses along Church and Cactus Roads, with no possibility of gross receipts taxes from commercial customers, is an act of desperation to offset the financial losses and shift the economic burdens of this infrastructure project onto the backs of local property owners. Second, the town is currently the target of a notice of violation by the New Mexico Environment Department for its failure to operate the plant in accordance with its discharge permit and applicable laws. Contrary to the town's representations at a February 6, 2019 town council meeting, the violations identified in the Environment Department's notice have not been entirely resolved, just because a tentative plan is in place to address the remaining issues that gave rise to the state's letter. I say tentative plan because the town's ability to address and correct the violations is contingent on getting money from the state during the current legislative session. Those issues in the notice of violation that have been corrected were only recently addressed thanks to a $200,000 grant and a $450,000 loan, which mortgages and commits some of our future gross receipts taxes for up to the next 30 years. In sum, the town still has duties and obligations to perform to correct its violations of the discharge permit for the plant. The town does not currently have the money to correct all of those violations, which will likely cost an additional $1 to $2 million or more. A deadline to correct the violations is still coming up later this calendar year. And if the town cannot meet that deadline, state law imposes a penalty of $15,000 per day per violation. It's hard to argue that the sewer plant is a success when it is not operating in full compliance with state and federal laws, and the town's ability to correct the violations is contingent upon legislative appropriations from a group of politicians in Santa Fe. Failure to meet the state's deadlines will expose us to steep penalties that will put not only the treatment plant, but the town itself in financial default, theoretically, even bankruptcy. Because of the town's past failures to properly operate the sewer plant, its precarious finances, and its hopeful expectation of funding from the state legislature, which is anything but a guarantee, the Environment Department has imposed additional requirements on the town, which now has to submit quarterly progress reports toward meeting the deadlines imposed in the notice of violation. Third, while the plant is operating within performance limits as defined by the permit, it is only servicing 27 accounts, representing a larger number of businesses that generally only have a bathroom or two and maybe a break room. In other words, most of the plant's current commercial users have wastewater that is similar, if not identical, to residential output, calling into question the mayor's assertion that adding residential service will help the plant to operate more efficiently by diluting the wastewater that enters the facility. As of today, the town is treating approximately 35,100 gallons per day in a facility that's designed for 150,000 gallons per day. But operating at 23% of design capacity is not a failure. Fourth, the sewer system was improperly designed from the start. To deal with the hard water that we have here in Edgewood, a central technology in the plant utilizes membranes or screens that filter recyclable water from the solid waste that enters the system. Unfortunately, these membranes have been failing much too early. They were expected to have a useful life of 8 years, but with our hard water, these screens were failing after just 4 months. Even now, with better cleaning and maintenance procedures, as well as diluted water from the Comfort Inn Hotel, these membranes are lasting only about 25% of their design life, which amounts to about 2 years. In addition to the extra maintenance time required to service these membranes for our local application, they're expensive. Each screen, which is sold as a cassette, costs $20,000 each and every time it has to be replaced. In the end, the technology used to treat water in our sewer plant is just not appropriate for the town's application because of the high calcium content of our water. According to the town, this may not be a failure in the plant, but rather an opportunity to acquire more high-dollar infrastructure in the form of EPCOR's water system at a cost to the local community that is hard to comprehend, let alone justify. In addition to the millions of dollars that are necessary to meet the requirements of the permit, which do nothing to improve the performance of the facility, the operating costs are about $350,000 per year. There are 2 full-time employees, plus the occasional contractor, and whatever personnel in the town offices that are necessary from time to time. Given the overall cost of the sewer plant, the hookup cost to the town per customer is over $200,000. Compare this to the income the town generates from its operations, which is only about $35,000 per year. Surely this will get better, right? Well, the Phase 1 collection lines that were just finished cost $550,000 plus engineering fees and will serve maybe 4 houses. So the current prospects don't look good. With waivers for mandatory connection to the sewer system being considered by the council to relieve the terrible burden of unnecessary hookups, it may be the case that just a few unlucky members in our community will face the dire financial consequences of a sewer ordinance and its failing wastewater treatment plant. It seems like more and more the town is playing with the fortunes and the future of its citizens as if this were a lottery. Or perhaps Russian roulette is more appropriate. Our estimates of the number of properties subject to mandatory connections in the service area that includes the Phase 1 extension of the sewer collection lines on Church and Cactus Roads could be wrong. But if it includes your property, I certainly hope the chamber is empty when the town points a gun at you and demands that you empty your pockets to pay for its infrastructure blunders. The fact that the town is meeting the standards under its permit for discharged water at the plant is perhaps the only measurement by which the town plant is not failing. By any other standard, it's a disaster. It's time for the town to stop the secrecy and procrastination on this issue by facing the problems with the sewer plant head-on and in public. As in any case, the first step towards solving a problem is admitting that there is one. I pray the town is willing to take this first step, but that could be a leap of faith on my part. This is Adrian Terry, brought to you by Citizens for an Open and Responsible Edgewood.